Today, I want to speak on addiction and the role that it plays in our lives and how we are all addicted to something. And we simply need reflection and, well, not even. I think we all know that which we are addicted to, that we should cease being addicted to. And it isn't always something like drugs or, porn or social media. Sometimes it's, you know, like music or you know, playing chess or going to the gym or, any activity you do compulsively that you know is to the detriment of yourself or to others in excess is an addiction. And food, drugs, alcohol, social media, all these things in this day and age make addiction a part of, it seems like, everyone's lives. And it's very sad. And it's very disheartening that I say the government, but I mean expecting the government to care about the people is, pretty crazy. But um, no one cares. No one cares that the main job of people who make social media is to make you spend as much time on it as possible. To it's a free app, so the way that they make money is your attention. So their main goal is to capture your attention for as long as possible, no questions asked. Whether that's short form content after short form content, you know, giving you an algorithm of things that you like, things that interest you, giving you shopping tabs for things that you've searched up recently. And it's very sad that we live in a day and age that just doesn't care. The people in positions who could do something about this do nothing. And that doesn't surprise me, but it is disheartening. But it really puts all the pressure on us. We really have to make a conscious, willful effort in this day and age, more than ever before, to not become addicted to something. Because, I mean, we have, music. Everything used to be in such moderation that it was so beautiful. You wouldn't hear music unless, you went to like a symphony or, someone was playing on the side of the road or side of the street, and you just wouldn't hear music that often. So when you heard it, it was special. Or you played it and you were creating music, and that's also special, and that helps your mind and this, that, and the other. But now we just have a phone that has, all the best songs ever created and a bunch of horrible songs being created now, and at any moment we can just give into it. We have that feeling of boredom, that feeling of staring into the void, and we can get rid of it so quickly. We can leave it so easily because we have a phone. We could play on some music. We could throw on a YouTube video. We could go read a book. I have a Kindle Scribe, and it's amazing, especially when I go traveling to journal and have multiple books in a, compact thing. But I can buy a book instantly. I don't have to give in to boredom whatsoever. I can, buy a book, sample a book, not like it, sample, buy another book, not like it, sample, buy another book. I can go through, three, four, five books in, 15 minutes. And, if they're not capturing my attention, I don't have to give them any more time. I can go on social media whenever and just scroll and just have dopamine, just have content that is interesting but short and just at my disposal, all of our disposals, whenever, wherever. And these are the compulsive behaviors that we all have. And that's why I got rid of all my social media. That's why, you know, for a long time I didn't listen to music at all. I didn't listen to music in any case, in any scenario, because it was just a compulsive activity. I felt like was it's not bad in and of itself. Listening to music once a day or when you go to the gym, or when you do certain things. I'm not saying these are horrible vices that we all need to cut out, but you do need to know yourself. And I have a very addictive personality, and I take things, everything I do, to the extreme. So I need to be very mindful, and I think we all do. There's definitely different degrees, but I mean, feel like a lot of people have addictive personalities because we are creatures of habit. And we need to be careful with the things we create habits with. And we need to be careful with the things we do. Yes, watching a movie here and there isn't bad, but if you have an addictive personality and it's going to turn into an every night thing, it's bad. And maybe it's better, excess is better than, or absence is better than excess. Moderation is the goal. Moderation is the virtue. As Aristotle says, virtue is the mean of two vices. And if moderation is the mean, then absence and excess are the two vices. But as Aristotle also says, usually virtue leans to one side. If you're going to be on one side of the of virtue, it's better to be on absence than excess, for sure. And it's better to be rash than to be cowardice, for courage is the mean, which is the virtue. And we really just have to know ourselves in this day and age. Yeah, and maybe moderation with social media is better than absence, but I think everyone has a social media issue these days, and it's it's not beneficial to me whatsoever. I know others disagree, and it's hard to tell in this day and age with what's cope and what isn't. But I mean, I think deep down in your hearts of hearts, you know if something's beneficial or harming you. And I think social media harms most of us. I think the compulsion to listen to music every time we get in the car harms us. We're avoiding the silence where the answers we are seeking lie. I think the compulsion to just, you know, not be bored is bad. It's hard sometimes to just really give into that boredom when you don't have to. When you're a click away from, you know, all the greatest films ever made, a click away from all your favorite songs, a click away from, turning on the console and playing a video game, a click away from watching your show that you like, a call away from hanging out with friends, a drive away from being in an environment where there's a bunch of people. We are, it's, if you never want to be alone and give in to boredom, you really don't have to. I mean, obviously, you'll encounter these moments occasionally, and they'll be horrible for you because you're not used to it and you've been running away from yourself, and that's why a lot of people have insomnia, and that's why a lot of people struggle with sleeping because their life is just in service to running away from their problems and running away from silence. And then when your head hits the pillow at night and you try to go to sleep, you can't avoid the silence, and your soul berates you because it's the only chance it gets. It's the only time it gets where you're forced to listen. And it hates it has to sacrifice sleep to do it. But what you're doing is worse than excuse me, sorry. What you're doing is worse than a lack of sleep. So your soul, it must make a decision, and it chooses wisely to inhibit your sleep because you're inhibiting your life. We really do just have to know ourselves though, because as I said, I lean towards excess, not not absence, and I need to make a conscious, willful effort to be absent of things. And at times it kind of sucks because there's certain things that I like doing that I just can't do, or I take them too far, and that's a vice. But that's something I know about myself, my natural disposition, and that is what we all need to have. We all need to have we all need to understand our natural disposition towards these things and not become addicted to things and do them compulsively, because when we do them compulsively and become addicted, we are avoiding things that we should be doing. We are actively destroying our souls and forming a bad relationship with something that we shouldn't even really have a relationship with. And it gets harder and harder over time because the habit gets ingrained. You know, when the anticipation of dopamine gives a little dopamine spike, and when you do not satisfy the urge, then you get a crash in dopamine, and this doesn't feel good. It just it doesn't feel good. It's not optimal, but it's what happens when you're addicted to something and you try to quit. And we have to understand it's not going to be completely a walk in the park. Even if our highest, best self wants it 100%, wills it so much, prays for it, thinks about it constantly. And those split-second decisions, we all make wrong decisions so often. We all make decisions we regret in those moments. Many moments throughout the day, we will restrain ourselves, and then one moment will ruin it all. And that's hard. That's hard, and that's why moderation is so hard, because it's also so tricky to know when you're actually giving into it out of moderation, because because when you're not giving into it compulsively, it's hard to tell, because the only time you ever do something is when you think about it, and you can never truly know if you're coping by saying that, oh, this isn't a compulsive action right now. I've been I haven't been giving into this for a while. This isn't a compulsive decision. It's well thought out. It was decided that I was going to do it, this, that, and the other. But then you just form a really bad relationship, and you start becoming addicted to things that you shouldn't be addicted to. And it takes away from the real work we need to do. And that's the biggest thing. That's the biggest thing. I've spoken much on addiction during this video, but the biggest thing is the thing the addiction takes us away from. The true work of life, the true things that we truly want to be doing, the hard work that can't be done with willy-nilly, activities. It takes hard work and discipline to fight the resistance off to become that who you are. And addiction just makes it so hard. When you have an addiction, when you have a addictive tendency towards a habit, and you're in that discomfort of hard work, when you're exploring the recesses of your soul, it's so easy to just, step back and go do that vice. Go do that thing you compulsively do to just pass the time in an offhand way. It's so easy, and it's so tempting, and it's so hard not to do it when you have addiction and these habits ingrained into your lifestyle. The way the human is, we might have to be addicted to something. I'm not completely convinced that we cannot be addicted to something. And that's why I think everyone has their vices, because we have to be addicted to something. And nothing in excess. Nothing in excess. And all we can really do is just pick good things to be addicted to, and realize and try to do our damnedest to be moderate in those things. But realize that, if we are to be addicted to something, like, let's be addicted to virtue. Let's be addicted to discipline. Let's be addicted to, you know, eating healthy, going to the gym, reading, writing, following your dreams, things of that nature. Be addicted to those things, because we have to be addicted to something. At least that's my humble opinion. At least that's how it seems for me. I've never had a moment in my life where I wasn't addicted to something, whether it was, reading, making videos, thinking, playing video games, social media, you know, drugs, you name it. There's hasn't been a time in my life where I wasn't addicted to something. And the times in my life where I was happiest, where I felt like I was closest to becoming who I am, where I felt like I was doing what I was meant to be doing was when I was addicted to, thinking and contemplating and reading and writing and posting videos and doing that which the still small voice says, which I like to categorize as virtue. For virtue is never convenient, and the still small voice, it never preaches convenience to us. Always difficulty, always hardship, always the things we know deep down we should do, but the things we know deep down we do not want to do, but we know we need to. And becoming addicted to those things, becoming addicted to discomfort, is where we can become addicted to growth, where we can become addicted to change, where there is no growth without change, and there's no growth without discomfort. We go, it's like a pendulum in life, we go back and forth on this, getting on and off the path. And I think the goal is just to, try to just hone that in. You have the ball that just goes like this, and then over time, it slowly stops going to such extremes. And I think that's really the goal, to get us as close to moderation. But we really need to try to make a conscious, willful effort to lean towards absence so often, because it's the compulsive it's the compulsive nature that breeds addiction, its harmfulness. And when you are actively engaging in absence, I guess you can be addicted to absence, I guess, and you can compulsively say no to things. But I think it's wiser to be a quick no and a long yes. It's wiser to it's because we've all said yes to things that we regret, and then we have to get how we have to do them. But if you say no to something, and you can so often go back to it. You can so often say no, and then a day later be like, hey, I was actually thinking I would like to do that. Or you said no to something, and you're like, you know what, today I will do that thing, because I didn't really struggle with the no I gave myself. It's been a long time. It could be moderation, and I'll make a willful, conscious effort to not continue to give into it, the next time, because then there can be moderation. But this really, comes down like all things, the wisest proverb, know thyself. You have to know what you're addicted to. You have to know the things you're compulsively giving into. You have to know the things you're doing, why you're doing them, and when you're avoiding the silence, what you should be doing instead, why you're giving into these things. They tell you so much about yourself and who you're trying to become and what you need to do. And that's why the unexamined life is not worth living, because you can never examine why your addictions are your addictions, why you do what you do. You never know, you just do. And you just become an addict in so many things. And then so often, no one's with you always. No one knows your thoughts constantly. So when you're addicted to something like, say, music, you know, no one's gonna, no one's gonna come and check you. When you're addicted to audiobooks, no one's gonna come and check you, because they don't know how much you indulge in that. And to the average person, and with all things considered, the average vice, music and audiobooks and podcasts are not the end of the world. But if that is your compulsive reaction to avoiding work, discomfort, and change, growth, then it's bad. But only you can know that. Only you can know what and when you're avoiding things and what you're using to avoid things in. And it can be a virtuous action. It can be the gym. It doesn't have to be drugs. It doesn't have to be social media. It can be good actions. It can be admirable things that you've taken to excess that now you use as a crutch to avoid the next work. There's this quote, I think, James Hollis, I heard it from James Hollis, but I think he was quoting Carl Jung, saying that it's a scary quote, but I'm going to butcher it, but it's something along the lines of like, what has gotten you here is now preventing you from getting you there. So it's like you were here and you needed to get here. So you developed all these habits, you developed all these traits, habits, addictions to get to from here to here. But now everything you did to get to move that needle is now preventing you from moving this needle. And you have to drop it all. You have to drop the facade. You have to drop the addictions, the habits, and give into the next thing. You have to be disciplined enough to do this and to drop your addictions. If, I did a lot of reading, as you may be able to tell. And, now I want to do writing. And I want to write a book, and I love writing, but I have this addiction to reading, that I'm trying to find a good book. I'm trying to learn more. I'm trying to gain knowledge. I'm curious, and it's taking me away from doing the work I know I should be doing. When I know I should be writing, I'm trying to read, and that's just, what got me from here to here, being not able to write a book to being able to potentially write a book, is now was reading, but now being able to potentially write a book and or being able to write a book and actually bringing it into actualization. Reading too much is inhibiting that. Yes, there's still a time and a place, of course, but we all know, and that's just why it's so hard, because we all know when we're giving into the wrong thing. And sometimes it can be really hard because, that's the time and the place you give into this habit. But when you're sitting there and I shouldn't be doing this, I should be doing that. This is what this time and place calls for. This is what this moment is asking of me. And you deny it because of addiction. You're inhibiting that which you are meant to be. You're destroying the person that is trying to come out of you. You're not expressing that which your soul is expressing and wants expression through you. And I think it's scary to think that, you spend 3 years building all these habits, doing all these things, and then it's scary when they're no longer in service to you, when they're no longer helping you, when they no longer push the needle. And you think, I really had to develop all that just to get to a point where it no longer fulfills me, where I know it's the wrong thing, where I no longer find meaning from it. I have to, burn the boats again. We've all we it's so it kind of sucks to think, you think burning the boats is a one-time thing, but every time you get too many boats, you got to burn them. Every time you get too comfortable, you got to burn your boats. And that can be a scary realization when you thought it was only going to be a one-time deal. When you thought it was just this one occurrence and then life was going to be fine, dandy, and everything was going to go all right. And you now found who you were and what gave you meaning and what helped you get up in the morning. That changes constantly. And it's hard when you realize you have to make that change. Because if nothing changes, nothing changes. And in an addiction, nothing changes. It's the same compulsive, addicted activity. And it actually does change. I was wrong. It gets worse. We search to push that needle further and further. We are no longer satisfied with, what used to satisfy us. More is what satisfies us now. So, we used to be satisfied with this much, then we need a little more, then we need a little more, then we more and more and more and more, and then, we're so far removed from that initial addiction we had, because this little thing could never satisfy us now that we're all the way out here. I think you understand the point, though, and the dangers of addiction. I think you always have. You've had to have. But I think it's a big and a hard realization to realize the habits that aren't so bad, are sometimes the habits that are holding you back the most. And, sometimes it's the obvious ones too, the drug addiction that you're like, all right, I need to stop. But then those are also hard. And we can always cope for why we do these things. We can always find reasons to do them. We can always find reasons not to change. But if you find at least one reason to change, you should change. You should drop your addictions and become addicted to virtue, to discipline, to kindness, to love, to God.